back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, March 26th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, the graphic does work again today. To tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the NFL officially banning the hip drop tackle. So we'll talk about that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Giants and what they're going to plan on doing at the quarterback position with the draft. So we'll talk about that, and also some comments that Brian Dable had to say regarding Daniel Jones. Then we'll also talk about the 49ers. We'll talk about Brandon Ayuk as well as Brock Purdy, and them being excited about him having a full offseason. So we'll get into all that in the third part of the show. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Ravens and their excitement over bringing in running back Derrick Henry. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the NFL banning the hip drop tackle. So last week I was talking about how, this was going to be a thing, that they were working towards banning this. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm for that because of the fact that, Mark Andrews got hurt. And also, the year before that, Tony Pollard got hurt. So at that moment in time, I was like, yeah, that's not an issue. And then you hear all the players reacting. You see all the players reacting to it. And then you kind of sit back and you realize, they do have a point. Because if they ban this, what are players supposed to do? How are players supposed to tackle? And we talked about this in our production meeting for the GSMC Sports Network too, and I said, well, what do you got to do? You have to wrap the guy up and just walk him out of bounds? Like, is that what you're going to have to do? And you see how people are reacting on social media, talking about, the NFL would just ban tackling. So, but I know I did say this, though, that for the referees, it is going to be very hard to enforce. Because if you remember, you go back to when they made challenging, a pass interference call, if it was pass interference or not, that made their job tougher, so they got rid of that. They just got rid of the ability to challenge. And just looking at pass interferences as well and other calls, the referees have a very tough job. And this is going to add to that. Because a player could tackle somebody and not intentionally be trying to do a hip drop tackle, and then there's a flag, and they get and it's a 15-yard penalty. And I could already see on social media fans complaining about it, and players are going to continue to complain about it. It's not going to be good. And also J.J.Watt, he said, I believe on the Pat McAfee show, he was like, well, first he tweeted, just bring the flags out. And just go to flag football because that's what it's starting to turn into. But also he said, if you're going to ban this, well, what about the plays where you got offensive linemen driving themselves into the knees of into D linemen, and mailboxing them. Why are they not banning that? So this is so yeah, I'm kind of changing my tune on this a little bit because again, it's going to be hard to enforce, and also how are players going to tackle whoever has the ball? Defensive players ever going to tackle guys that have the ball, running backs, receivers, it's and quarterbacks. Well, quarterbacks, I mean, once you grab them, then and you start walking them back, then the refs are gonna stop the play. But yeah, it is gonna be very hard to enforce. And in general, it's gonna make the game harder for defensive players. So yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do, but it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But yeah, so like I said, if a player demonstrates a hip drop tackle, it's going to result in a 15-yard penalty. The ban is likely to be enforced similarly to the use of a helmet rule, with warning letters and fines issued after games. 2 proposals were approved. So teams will receive a third. So this is actually another rule that was put in place as well. So teams will receive a third challenge after one successful challenge. So I actually do like that. If there's a double foul during a down with the change of possession, the team last gaining possession keeps the ball after enforcement for its foul. The hip drop tackling ban targets a subset of the rugby tackling style, aiming to reduce lower body injuries. The rule specifically specifies actions like grabbing the runner with both hands, wrapping with both arms, and unweighting oneself by swiveling and dropping hips. NFL executive Jeff Miller reported 230 instances of the tackling technique last season, resulting in 15 players missing time. So that's really what it comes down to. It's led to players getting hurt. But you also have players like J.J.Watt saying players are going to get hurt anyways. It's unfortunate that it happens, but that's football, though. I did want to touch upon, what players had to say on social media. So this is what Tramon Williams said. So this is from Twitter. So he said, "You have to be kidding me. It's hard enough to play defense in the league with all the calls suited for offenses, but this is ridiculous. Come on now. We must address the matter to ensure the game remains fair and balanced for both sides." Terrell Burgess said, "How do you ban something that in some cases you can't control?" Shake my head. Darius Butler posted a GIF that says trash with an exclamation point. Jeff Schwartz said, "Enforcing this will be a wreck." Cam Jordan posted a video. He posted a GIF that says "Hold up, flag on the play," and he had a bunch of throwing up emojis. J.J.Watt said, now this is what I was saying before, "Just fast forward to the belts with flags on them." Yeah, that's kind of where we're headed, though. And like I said, it's making it harder for players to play defense. So, yeah, again, when I first saw that they were looking to ban this, I was like, yeah, I mean, player safety, but it's going to make things a lot harder for players on defense. So, again, we'll see how they enforce it. Again, you got referees who already are heavily scrutinized, and now you're asking them to be the judge of, okay, did he demonstrate a hip drop tackle or did he not? Was he intentionally doing it or was he not? Because now that's going to end up getting called, and you're going to have a lot of people complaining. So, and again, referees already have a tough job as it is, and they're heavily scrutinized. People calling them out saying that games are fixed, allegedly fixed because of the calls that refs make. Well, refs also just make bad calls, and we've seen that plenty of times. And now you're making their jobs harder by making them evaluate players and how they are tackling in games. Because again, with this new rule in place, in a big moment, If a defense needs to get a stop and they get a stop, but they demonstrate a hip drop tackle and that's a 15-yard penalty, and it's like it's like the team's up by 1 or 2, and all the other team has to, the team that's on offense, all they got to do is kick a field goal. If they get into field goal range, they win the game because of that. They're gonna get criticized for it. So I could already see it happening. Again, for me, I'm all about player safety, but for me, if this rule is going to make it harder for defensive players, then this rule, then I can't really say that I am for this rule then, this rule change. Because, again, you're just making it more difficult for defensive players to go out and do their job. And that's to tackle, And, again, like I said, what are they going to have to do? Are they just going to have to wrap the player up and walk him out of bounds? Is that what's going to have to happen? I mean, I guess so. But, yeah. But let me know what you guys think about this whole thing. Because, yeah, it's... And again, when you got the players also reacting to it in a negative way, I mean, I can't argue with that. Again, I'm looking at the Mark Andrews injury, the Tony Pollard injury. Those are what I'm looking at, and I'm saying, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But then you also think about it, and you're like, well, how are players supposed to tackle? So, again, and football is a violent game. No matter what you do, injuries are always going to happen, and that goes for every sport. There's always going to be a freak thing that happens that leads to a player getting hurt. That's just sports. It happens everywhere. Even in baseball, they try their best to make sure to keep players fresh. They play 162 games. They try to rest guys, and pitchers especially. I mean, how many pitchers have gotten so many pitchers have gotten hurt, and teams do their best to try to keep them fresh and make sure they don't blow out their elbows. But guys still get hurt anyways. You could do whatever you want. You could try to be as safe as possible. But you're not going to you're not going to stop everything. You're not going to stop injuries. So it's just a part of the game. And yeah, it's unfortunate that players like Mark Andrews, like Tony Pollard, have gotten hurt from this kind of tackling. But again, it's part of the game. Now, people were saying how Logan Wilson, may have intentionally been doing that because because that happened in the Thursday night game against the Bengals. Because I think he was also part of another play. I think that involved Odell Beckham Jr. too, and people were saying, yeah, he's intentionally doing this. So it's tough. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening. Like I said, it's going to be the bottom line is this: it's just going to be tough to enforce. So, again, I mean, we'll see how it all plays out during the season, but a lot of people are not happy about it. So, and like I said, I'm changing my tune on this because initially I was like, yeah, I'm okay with this, but now I'm like, yeah, it's going to be tough to enforce. Players are not happy about it. And on top of that, it's what are you expecting players to do? So, but again, I'm not going to change my stance on, well, I mean, look at the players that got hurt from this. But then again, if I was talking to J.J.Watt, he would bring up what he said on the Pat McAfee show. Well, then how come, offensive linemen are allowed to mailbox defensive linemen and take out their knees? So, yeah, again, let me know what you guys think about this because, yeah, maybe J.J. Watt's right. Maybe we're going to see belts and flags in a couple of years, and it's just going to be flag football. I mean, look, they play a flag football game in the Pro Bowl, so that might be what we end up seeing in a few years. I mean, you hope not, but that's kind of where we're going because, I mean, again, it really all has started when they really have prioritized protecting the quarterback, and you just cannot hit the quarterback. But quarterbacks are the stars of the league, and you don't want to see them get hurt. So it's just kind of trickled down into now. I mean, it's going to be hard to tackle someone, because you could get flagged. But, yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts on it. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. So with that being said, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the Giants, a couple things, John Mara, his comments on the Giants' approach with the draft, Giants owner John Mara, and then we'll also talk about Brian Dable and some of his comments regarding quarterback Daniel Jones. So that's what we'll discuss when we come back from our first break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some loose shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Giants, a couple things, talk about John Mara and how the Giants are going to approach the draft, also Brian Dable and what he had to say about Daniel Jones. I also did want to bring up, I did forget to bring this up in the first segment. So the kickoff is officially going to be changed. They're adopting that XFL model, so basically, under the new rule, 10 players on the kicking team and at least 9 players on the receiving team will line up just 5 yards apart and won't begin running until the ball gets back to the returner, meaning players won't be going full speed when they crash into each other, which caused so many injuries on kickoffs in years past. Of the 22 players on the field, only the kicker and 1 or 2 kickoff returners will line up separately from those players who are 5 yards apart. The kicker will kick the ball from his own 35-yard line. 10 of his teammates will line up on the other team's 40-yard line. The receiving team's 9 or 10 blockers will line up on their own 35-yard line. The kick must land between the 20-yard line and the goal line. A kick that either goes out of bounds or lands short of the 20 will be awarded to the receiving team at the 40-yard line. A kick that goes into the end zone for a touchback will go out to the receiving team's 30-yard line. So this is on NBCSports.com. So I just wanted to bring that up because that officially got passed as well. So yeah, kickoffs are going to be different. There's going to be more strategy to that, so we'll see how that goes as well. But now let's get into what this segment is about. So it's about the Giants. So again, I know I've said in the past that I am a Giant fan, and as you could tell by all the Yankee stuff in the background, New York sports fan. So yeah, I mean, again, you're not going to get a full-on, fan reaction from me, but this is, what has been said over the, past couple of days, or at least, recently, in the recent times. So John Mara has given a green light to drafting a quarterback as high as the first round in the 2024 NFL Draft. He also expressed support for general manager Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Dable to select a quarterback if they believe it's the best move for the team, even if it means using their 6th overall pick or potentially trading up. The decision comes in light of quarterback Daniel Jones' injury-plagued 2023 season, including a torn ACL and a previous neck injury, which has raised concerns about his durability and future performance. Schoen has been observed attending quarterbacks pro days, including that of potential number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams from USC, indicating the team's interest in the position. The Giants have also brought in multiple quarterbacks for visits to their team facility and interviewed others at the NFL Scouting Combine. They also brought in Drew Lock on a one-year, $5 million contract as insurance. Mara emphasized confidence in Jones, stating that he expects Jones to be the starter in 2024 once medically cleared. And that's the same thing with Brian Dable as well. The Giants scouting department has been reportedly highlighting the 2024 quarterback class as one of the most talented groups in years, providing the team with various options to consider. The final decision on drafting quarterback is expected to be made in the coming weeks as discussions progress within the organization. And Dable also came out and said that when Daniel Jones comes back from injury, he is the guy. So, okay. Now, I've said it. The Giants have a lot of needs. You could look at wide receiver. Offensive line, they've kind of addressed in the offseason, but still I think is something that they could definitely dip their toes in. Whether it might not even be in the first round. It could be in, later rounds. Running back, that's something that maybe you look at towards the end of the draft if they want to do that. I know they brought in Devin Singletary to replace Saquon Barkley. Listen, running back for me is not a priority. It's offensive line, it's wide receiver, it's quarterback. Not in that specific order, but the offense is really where I think this team needs significant upgrades. And you look at the defense, and I love the Brian Burns trade. I think that's going to work out well for them, especially because you're pairing now Brian Burns with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. I am really excited for the Giants' defensive line. And, you saw improvements from Bobby Okereke, who they brought in last season. Didn't get off to a great start, but really settled in, and he became a productive player for them. And you got the young guys in the secondary like Deonte Banks. So I like the direction that the defense is going in. Now, they're changing defensive coordinators, the whole thing with Wink Martindale. I don't have to go into that. But I like the direction that the defense is going in. I know losing Xavier McKinney, that's tough. But, I think they're going to be – I think they'll be fine defensively. But we'll see. Offense is the issue. And, again, the Giants could do many different things with their pick. They could even maybe potentially trade down, and maybe you take like a Michael Penix late in the first round. If you end up trading down, I'm just speculating. But I think a quarterback is a priority in this draft. I think they'll go out and they'll try to get a receiver in this draft, whether it's they draft it with their first pick or not. They have signed some offensive linemen this offseason. They signed one from the Lions. They signed one from the Buccaneers as well for depth, and they're still expecting, John Michael Schmitz to, have a better second season because, they drafted him to be their center. Evan Neal, it hasn't been great. But Andrew Thomas, what you're getting out of him. We'll see how John Runyon is, getting him from the Packers. The Giants went out and they dressed the offensive line. And on top of that, they also, did bring in a replacement for Saquon Barkley, Devin Singletary, who did have a nice season with the Texans, and is a decent player. So, but you're not going to expect him to be Saquon Barkley. That's just not going to happen. But at least you have a player that can come in that has experience and can at least do the job, even though he's not going to put up Saquon numbers. So, and then the quarterback position. Daniel Jones is the guy. They keep saying it. But you also had, Rich Eisen come out and say, from what he heard at the Combine, the Giants were done with Daniel Jones. So I'm thinking that this really is just Daniel Jones is going to be the bridge quarterback. So he's going to start. You're going to have the Giants are going to draft a quarterback, and then that quarterback is going to sit behind him. And they did also bring in Drew Lock. So for all we know, Drew Lock could be the week 1 starter for the Giants. That is very much a possibility. But they did say if Daniel Jones comes back, he's going to be the guy. So if he's the guy, it might just be this year, and then you go to your guy the following season. I think that's really what we're gearing up towards. Now, some of you might say, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. But, I mean, who knows? Who knows? Because one of the big reasons why the Giants haven't been successful is the failure on the ownership. You know, as much as I loved Eli Manning, his best days were behind him, and the Giants are trying to drag it out with him. Now, again, if they had better personnel in place, players and front office, and they were able to surround Eli with more talent, I think Eli's probably still playing, honestly. But that just ended up not being the case. And they tried to do it on the fly when they brought in Dave Gettleman. They drafted Barkley. They signed Nate Solder. They were trying to get at least one more playoff run out of Eli, and it just wasn't going to happen. And then on top of that, we've gone from, you had Tom Coughlin, you had Jerry Reese, then you had Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo. Then they were both gone. You bring in Gettleman. You bring in Pat Shurmur. Then Pat Shurmur's gone. You bring in Joe Judge. Him and Gettleman are gone. And now we got Dable and Joe Schoen. And they both inherited a mess. Like, let's be honest. Now, you could look at some players that Gettleman has drafted, like Dexter Lawrence, like Andrew Thomas, and say, okay, those are players that Gettleman drafted. That was good. But there was a lot of stuff that Gettleman did that kind of set this team back. And Joe Schoen and Brian Dable have to deal with it. Now, it looks like they're getting out of it. But you could also look at, well, they are the ones that gave Daniel Jones that contract. So they got to eat that. And many people could say, well, you could have gave that money to Saquon Barkley instead of paying Daniel Jones, and maybe that was the right thing to do at the time. They should have did that. But Daniel Jones, he was coming off of his best statistical season. Now, again, you look at the touchdown to interception ratio, it's not spectacular. He also had all those rushing touchdowns as well. You got to factor in that too. And the quarterback position is the more valued position. So the Giants thought, we'll give you this money and then put Barkley on the franchise tag and we'll go from there. And 2023 just ended up being a disaster of a season. And Saquon Barkley ended up getting hurt. He missed some time. And that's another reason why they didn't pay Barkley, because Barkley, outside of his rookie season and 2022, he's gotten hurt. So I think the Giants did the right thing letting him walk. Let him take all that money from Philly. Yeah, it's going to sting. But the Giants have so many other issues that they just can't afford that contract for that position. So I like what they did there. But now the quarterback position is still a mystery. I mean, we're going to find out what they're going to do with this draft. The owner is giving them the green light. Go out and get a quarterback. If Joe Schoen is going and evaluating all these quarterbacks, they're going to go and do that. And who knows what else they could do? They could surprise people draft night. I think offense is a priority with receivers. They have to get more playmakers on this offense, because the receivers they have right now, there's nobody that scares you. And on top of that, you got Darren Waller, who they brought in, and he might not be playing anymore. So no Waller, Saquon leaves. I mean, Waller, he hasn't really been the same player since, his Raider days. And I think a lot of Giant fans, well, at least myself and my friends, we kind of figured that at some point Waller was going to get hurt. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I think Waller would have been better if they actually had a better offense, but that just was not the case. So quarterback, we'll see who they end up taking. Now, again, J.J. McCarthy, he's been getting there's a lot of speculation out there that the Giants could take him, But now I did see something that maybe the Commanders could end up taking him. Because, again, I said, well, you got Drake May, you got Jaden Daniels. We know Caleb Williams is most likely going number 1 overall. But J.J. McCarthy could find himself being that second quarterback if the Commanders actually want to take him. And then you slide Drake May and Jaden. Well, then again, we'll see. Then it's between Drake May and Jaden Daniels. But we'll see. Because the Commanders are going to take a quarterback, the Bears, the Patriots. So, the Giants are going to be that team that also needs one. The Cardinals are probably going to take a receiver, or they could trade down. The Chargers are another team as well that is not taking a quarterback. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But, the Giants have a lot of work they got to do. And Daniel Jones is looked at as the guy when he comes back, but he's not going to be the long-term answer. I think that's really what it comes down to. So before we go into our next break, just want to remind you guys, once again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers. We'll talk about Brandon Ayuk. We'll talk about Brock Purdy. We'll get into all that when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about the 49ers. We'll talk about a couple of their stars on offense, Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk. So Brandon Ayuk has been making some news lately. John Lynch, their general manager, he was asked about the whole, trade rumors and things like that. Well, he basically said, and this, again, we probably talked about this on a previous show. Well, I know we definitely talked about Ayuk on a previous show, but yeah, he dismissed the rumors of trading Brandon Ayuk, indicating that Ayuk isn't available for trade. He did have a conversation with actually Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin recently at Michigan's Pro Day, where Tomlin inquired about Ayuk, but Lynch assured him that nothing is happening regarding Ayuk. Because I was reading the article, Tomlin was saying, what's going on over there? And Lynch was saying, he's not up for trade. But Brandon Ayuk did post something on social media, just another cryptic post from a wide receiver. So he posted on his Instagram, he had a $, someone talking, a bull, the number 2 emoji. No, not the number 2 like the number, but the other number 2. And then someone walking. And this is what, in the article, the emoji translators. So it's money talks and expletive walks. So you got the bull and, so you know what I mean. Ayuk is really just saying, you guys got to pay me. So we'll see how that all plays out. The 49ers are actively engaged in discussions with Ayuk to find a way to keep him on the team. Lynch emphasized the team's commitment to drafting, developing, and retaining homegrown players like Ayuk, highlighting the importance of rewarding players who flourish with the team. Ayuk has been a successful draft pick for the 49ers, posting impressive stats and earning recognition as a second-team All-Pro. Now, Lynch didn't completely rule out the possibility of trading Ayuk in the future. He made it clear that Ayuk remains a priority for the 49ers. They are working towards keeping him on the team. So again, we'll see what ends up happening. Ayuk is playing on his fifth-year tender for $14.1 million, contributing to the team's cap considerations. So again, we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, again, Brandon Ayuk posts another cryptic social media post. And yeah, he's basically saying, look, you could say that, but I want to get paid. And that's really what it comes down to. And are the 49ers going to be able to do that? It's going to be tough, though, because, again, I said this about the Bengals with T. Higgins. I mean, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. So the 49ers may ultimately have to make a tough decision and trade him. I could definitely see that happening. But, again, where would he end up being traded? I mean, who knows? The 49ers are coming off of another, Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Another tough season, or another tough ending to their season. They've gotten so close so many times, and they just keep coming up short. And, again, John Lynch says we don't want to trade him, but, they might have to force their hand and trade him if they're not able to agree to a new contract. And that would be a big loss because Ayuk has been a productive player for them. I mean, you go back to his rookie season making plays, and then the beginning of 2021 was interesting because I remember, at least from a fantasy perspective, everybody, including myself, was all over Ayuk. Everyone's like, wow, he's going to have a great year. And at least in the beginning of the season, people were saying, where is he? He's not been doing anything. He actually did end up finishing the season with 826 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. So he did finish the season strong. And then the next 2 years, 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards in 2022, then 1,300 yards in 2023 and 7 touchdowns. So, yeah, it's been productive. And, he's a part of one of the best offenses in the NFL. With him, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and, of course, acquiring Christian McCaffrey in 2022 at the deadline. That was huge. And, this team was very close to winning a Super Bowl and, again, came up short against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, again, this is something that we are going to keep an eye on throughout the whole offseason, or as the offseason progresses, as we get, towards next season. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting. The 49ers, they're going to try their best, but ultimately, it might come down to just, it's not going to work out, and they might have to trade him. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But the other thing, too, is they're excited about Brock Purdy's full offseason because if you remember, obviously suffered the elbow injury in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles and, was working his way back. Did end up playing week 1. He didn't miss any time, but that kind of prevented him last year from having a full off season. Now he's going to have a full off season, which they're really excited about. Kyle Shanahan acknowledged that the standard and expectations for him will continue to rise as he establishes himself as a top quarterback in the league. Shanahan emphasized the pressure on quarterbacks to perform consistently and praised Purdy for his resilience and performance despite facing challenges such as injury and limited offseason preparation. Overall, Shanahan expressed enthusiasm about coaching Purdy and believes that he has the potential to continue thriving as the 49ers starting quarterback. So, I mean, yeah, this is big to get a full offseason for Purdy. With that, maybe, he could be even better going into 2024. I mean, I don't know how much better, but listen, as long as he's got all these guys around him and Ayuk, I mean, he's gonna put up good numbers. And again, I thought he played well in the Super Bowl, but ultimately he was going up against Patrick Mahomes, and Brock Purdy is not on that level. But I mean, to tie these two segments together, if Brandon Ayuk ends up getting traded, well, that's a big loss for Purdy. And, I just said, hey, it's great that he's going to have a full off season. He can go into next season and play even better. But if you lose one of those pieces, that changes the dynamic of the offense. I mean, you saw what happened when Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel both got hurt. Brock Purdy and the offense, it was completely different. They went on a 3-game skid. They eventually got out of it. Deebo came back, Trent Williams came back, and then this team got rolling again. But, yeah, I mean, for a while there, it didn't look good. And Purdy was getting all the heat for it. And, yeah, it didn't look good. But then they got back on track. I mean, they did end up, they lost to the Ravens, and that wasn't a good game for Purdy. I mean, he had, 4 interceptions in that game? But other than that, played really well. And, they got to the Super Bowl. Now, again, they had to come back against the Packers. They had to come back against the Lions as well. But you know what? Give Purdy and the 49ers credit. They could have very easily folded and that was it. But no, they were able to overcome those deficits and make it to the Super Bowl. And that's, like I said, Purdy overcoming adversity. And especially in the NFC Championship game. I mean, they were down 24-7 and they came back. Again, they could have very easily folded and packed it in, but they didn't do that. So, got to, like I said, got to give him credit for that. But you don't want to lose Brandon Ayuk if you're Brock Purdy. You don't want to lose him. You want to keep these guys together because this team can win a Super Bowl. It's the problem is it's that team, the Kansas City Chiefs, that you're most likely going to have to go against. And honestly, if they would have went up against the Ravens, the game probably would have been similar to how it went on Christmas. Well, I mean, it's tough to say because would Brock Purdy really throw 4 interceptions again? I don't really think so, but I think the Ravens probably would have won. But yeah, I mean, the 49ers are a very good team. And they get so close every year. And it's just they can't get over that hump. And they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl back when Garoppolo was the quarterback. You make it to back-to-back NFC Championship games, you lose to the Rams, and then Purdy gets hurt, you lose to the Eagles. Then you get back to the Super Bowl and you lose to the Chiefs again. I mean, what else can they do? I mean, I know people blamed Kyle Shanahan for the loss, but I don't really think you could really blame him for that. Again, I think it all goes back to, well, Ray McLeod should not have muffed that punt because the Chiefs immediately cashed in on that. I think that's really who you got to blame. I mean, yeah, McCaffrey fumbles on the first drive. I mean, the 49ers, they were going right down the field on that first drive. And then McCaffrey fumbles. They were going to get points out of that. And they also didn't capitalize on, Pacheco's turnover and Mahomes' interception. They didn't capitalize on that. The Chiefs, they capitalized on the not the McCaffrey fumble, but the Ray McLeod fumble. They capitalized on that. So that was the difference in the game. So, and going into next year, I mean, you look at the landscape of the NFC. I mean, teams are going to be better. I mean, I talked about the Packers, and they're going to be a better team, and them and the Lions are going to be battling it out for the NFC North. I think the Eagles are going to be back to being the team that they were, before the collapse. I mean, again, I still look at the 49ers as the class of the NFC, but it's going to be tougher. The Packers, they almost beat them. The Lions almost beat them. And this was at home. What happens if the 49ers don't get home field advantage? I mean, I think they can handle, playing on the road. But, that was at home. I mean, if you're playing away, I mean, it's going to be even tougher. So, but again, for me, I know it's early, but I still look at the 49ers. They're the class of the NFC. And they're the team to beat in that conference. They are the team to beat in that conference. So, we'll see if a team, dethrones them in 2024, which is possible. Because again, you don't know what's going to happen year to year. Injuries, a team could come out of nowhere that you don't expect and goes on a miracle run and upsets them. Thought it might have been the Packers. But, yeah, I mean, it's, next year, it's a big year for them. Is next year going to be the year that they can get over that hump and finally win a Super Bowl with this group? Again, it remains to be seen. But again, you get to the Super Bowl, well, odds are you're playing number 15 on the other side. So, now again, look at me already declaring the Chiefs getting back to the Super Bowl. But, I mean, it's just, it's hard to not think that that's going to happen because, in a year where their offense wasn't great, they still got back to the Super Bowl and they won it. Now, again, look at the Patriots. I mean, 2017, Tom Brady had Brandon Cooks and he was putting up great numbers and, he ended up winning the MVP. And he throws for 500 yards in the Super Bowl against the Eagles and they ended up losing. So maybe that happens here with Patrick Mahomes. He puts up great numbers again. Marquise Brown and him, a lot of explosive plays, passes downfield. We see all that again with this offense. The Chiefs look like they're humming, and then maybe they don't win the Super Bowl. Maybe they fall a little bit short and lose to somebody else. It's possible. But, again, this is all, my hypotheticals. So, all right, so we're going to take our final break of the show now. When we come back, we'll talk about the AFC, more about the AFC. We'll talk about the Ravens and their excitement over getting Derrick Henry, and we'll talk about Derrick Henry's, past performances against the Ravens as well. So that's what we will get into when we come back from our final break of the show already. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we were going to talk about the Ravens' excitement over signing Derrick Henry. So I wanted to talk about John Harbaugh's comments, the head coach for the Ravens, and what he had to say. He's fired up about it. This is some of the quotes from him. He was asked about Henry. And he said, well, that's just it. People talk about attacking the full width of the field, especially in the run game. You could do it in the pass game too, or extend some runs, or call them screens and things like that. These are all things Lamar is so good at. He's talking about Lamar. Lamar does it by throwing the ball. He could do it by reading the defense and keeping it, or going a different way. We could take the back, and Lamar could go vertical. We've got a lot of different things that we like to do. So A gap, B gap, C gap, D gap, alley, or all the way to the sideline. You want to attack a defense like that, right? That's important in a run game, and Derrick Henry can attack every single one of those areas. So this is where he talks about Derrick Henry just as well. He could come downhill, there's no doubt about it. He's going to get after that A gap, and he's going to make people defend to force the defense to tuck in there real nice. And then he said, well, it's a big buzz, big guy and a big player. He has great personality and loves football. We played against him all those years. When you play against a guy, you earn respect for a guy, and we've had our hands full trying to stop him. So it kind of speaks to us how we want to play and approach the game, so I'm fired up to have him. And Derrick Henry has had some big performances against the Ravens. So Derrick Henry against the Ravens, so I did have his full numbers. In 4 career games against the Baltimore Ravens, Henry rushed for 277 yards on 55 carries with 3 touchdowns, leaving a lasting impression on the Ravens coaching staff. So let's go back to those specific games, shall we? So let's go back to the Titans playoff game. So that was back in 2019. Well, 2019-20. Well, it was in 2020 technically, but it was January 11th of 2020. So Lamar Jackson wins the MVP. Ravens finish 14-2. They're the 1 seed. And the Tennessee Titans, came to town, and Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback. And the Titans went in there and won that game by a couple of scores. They won 28-12. Ryan Tannehill actually went 7 of 14 for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, okay, so Derrick Henry had 30 carries for 195 yards in that game. They could not stop him. He also had 2 receptions for 7 yards. And he also threw for a touchdown. I believe it was to... Was it to Corey Davis? Yeah, it was to Corey Davis. So he threw a touchdown. Well, he caught it. Well, he didn't catch a touchdown, but he, made some catches. And he also ran the ball, mainly, because that's what he does. 30 carries for 195 yards. So he tormented the Ravens in that game. And they won't forget that. And I remember watching that game on that Saturday night. I think I was at my grandparents' house. And I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And the Ravens came out flat. And they just were not able to recover. So you had that game. Then you also had the game in 2020 during the regular season where Henry scored that game winner in overtime. I forget what week that was, but I'm looking it up right now. So, yeah, the final score was 30-24. So Derrick Henry in the game, 28 carries for 133 yards and a touchdown. He also had 1 reception for -1 yards. But yeah, 28 carries for 133 yards and a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown at the end. So yeah, they won that game, and the Titans actually improved to 7-3 on the season at that point. Now, the Ravens did get revenge on them in the playoffs. Now, they did play each other in the regular season, and I think I said it, but yeah, Harbaugh talked about what he did in that game. I think he ran the ball for, he said 70 yards. Oh, 12. So he had 12 carries, so a little less of a workload. 12 carries for 97 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, still made an impact on the game. But yeah, the Ravens are very happy to have him now. Now they don't have to deal with him. Deal with him going up against them. And this is going to be one of the more fascinating things in 2024 is the combination of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Because it's going to make that run-pass option, the read option, it's going to be a pain for defenses. Because you got Derrick Henry, who I think still has some mileage left on him. Again, he's 30 years old now, and we talk about running backs and how they age very quickly. Well, I think Derrick Henry still has some mileage left, and he's in a good situation. If he ended up going to a team that does not have a good offensive line, just is not a team that's in position to really compete for a championship or be a playoff team, then that's different. But Derrick Henry, with the Ravens, he's going to be productive. And you know what? Maybe he could defy the odds and be that Adrian Peterson and be that Marshawn Lynch where, yeah, he's getting older, but he could still produce. But yeah, he's taking a lot of punishment. But that's because he's a big dude. And, he's a bowling ball. He just drives over people. Nobody wants to hit that. When he's running. Nobody wants to try to tackle that. I mean, we talked about in the first segment, the hip drop tackle. Well, you need like 5 people to tackle him. But yeah, I mean, this was a solid move for the Ravens, and again, I mean, he tormented them in the playoffs, so I mean, they're happy to have him now, and this is coming off of the Ravens, still dealing with injuries at the running back position. I mean, you had J.K. Dobbins get hurt. Keaton Mitchell, their rookie running back, he ended up getting hurt as well. I mean, it just seems like every year the Ravens deal with injuries, specifically at the running back position. I mean, Lamar Jackson was thankfully healthy the whole season. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen again, and he stays healthy next year as well. But, J.K. Dobbins, continues to not be able to I mean, now he tears his Achilles, and you hope he bounces back. I mean, he's a free agent now, so we'll see if a team picks him up. I feel like somebody will give him a shot, but yeah, it's hard when he's had significant injuries, back-to-back seasons basically. Well, at least the year before 2022, because 2021, yeah, you had him, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill all got hurt, so they had to bring in Latavius Murray and who else? Devontae Freeman. I mean, it was really weird. It was a weird year for the Ravens. I think they also brought in Le'Veon Bell too at one point. Yeah, it just this is like a common occurrence for the Ravens every year. But now you bring in Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell. You hope comes back healthy. You still got Justice Hill there. Gus Edwards is now with the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins is a free agent. So we'll see if he ends up going elsewhere. But yeah, I think this, like I said, I think this is going to be one of the more fascinating storylines of the season in 2024, just having Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in the same backfield. And again, made jokes about it with my coworker, who's a Ravens fan. Oh, so now maybe the Ravens will run the ball 7 times instead of 6 in the championship game. Yeah, I mean, if you have Derrick Henry, so if the Ravens get back to that position next year and they're playing the Chiefs at home, Derrick Henry has to be your game plan. And don't panic like you did in this AFC Championship game where, the Chiefs took the lead and you're like, all right, well, we got to start throwing it, where you didn't really have to do that. Because the game never really got out of hand. But, then you can also look at Zay Flowers fumbling and Lamar Jackson throwing a pick. It's just, there were points left on the board too. So, but, listen, the Ravens and Derrick Henry, they do have a common enemy because Derrick Henry did play against the Chiefs in an AFC Championship game, and they did lose after having a 10-point lead. So, I mean, even though the Ravens have Derrick Henry, I mean, again, the Chiefs right now are still the team to beat. So, again, I'm excited to see what he could do with the Ravens. I think, again, having him and Lamar Jackson in the same backfield, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about that. How do you see Derrick Henry performing in 2024? Again, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, and the Ravens are going to be playing in a tough division. I mean, they did win it, but you're going to have a healthy Joe Burrow coming back next year. We'll see how Deshaun Watson performs next season. The Steelers with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, if Justin Fields ends up, starting. I mean, Mike Tomlin, I think, did say that, he's going to get a chance to show off, but Russell Wilson right now is locked in as the starter. So, I mean, again, I look at the Bengals and with the healthy Burrow and the Ravens as the favorites to win the division. So, but we'll see. I mean, that division, those teams are really going to beat up on each other. And that's the best division in football. So, I'm looking forward to that. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting how Derrick Henry does and, how him and Lamar Jackson work together. I think that's something that's going to be fun to watch. So, but, yeah, so that's pretty much it. Again, let me know what you guys think about, Derrick Henry, his acquisition, the Ravens' acquisition of Derrick Henry, and, what you think he's going to do next year, expectations for the Ravens with him. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Tomorrow is going to be a shortened show. Only 2 segments tomorrow, but then we'll be back to the traditional 4 Thursday and Friday. So a condensed show tomorrow. Everything else is the same the rest of the week. Towards the end of the week, we'll have the Sweet 16 for March Madness. Baseball starting, getting closer to the playoffs for the NBA and NHL. Also, the UFL is going to be starting this weekend, I believe, the Spring Football League. So, we'll touch upon that briefly at times. That's the combination of the USFL and the XFL now. I did see a picture of the uniforms for the upcoming season. So, yeah. So that's all the stuff that's coming up. Also, make sure to check out all the other shows here on the GSMC Sports Network. You got the basketball podcast, which will be at 12:30. So a little bit of a gap in between mine and that. So make sure to go check that out. Keep yourself updated on the March Madness stuff, NBA stuff, things like that. And all the other shows as well. I got a ton of them. And, make sure to tune into them as well. You can find them all on our YouTube channels. You can find them on, wherever you get your podcasts as well. If you just want to listen, rather than seeing my face, you could just listen to me talk. Make sure to go do that. It really helps me out. It helps the other shows out as well here on the GSMC Sports Network. But, other than that, that's pretty much it from me. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, a half-hour show we're going to do tomorrow, but then we'll be back to the full show Thursday and Friday. So, with that is all the time we have for today. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.